Hey, what's up? Anybody in the chat? How's the volume? How's the audio? Doing good? How's everybody doing this Sunday? Hey, Techno Bro 2, it's all good, great. Hey, everything's good. Thank you so much. Looks good, awesome, awesome. No mic issues, that's always a good start. So today is a very fun and interesting stream. Hopefully, I might, a lot of people might know a lot of the stuff I'll go through. Some might not. Might be key elements that you pick up on, which is great. Basically, this is sort of the Twitch stream version of a presentation I'm doing this month. So it's a cybersecurity awareness month, October. So I'm I'm all over the place, holding keynote presentations for Norwegian companies in Norwegian, telling them about how we performed our targeted operations and how we basically approach using information gathered. Thank you so much for the follow, Grimmy. During the OSINT phase of the operation, the open source intelligence information gathering phase of the operation, and how we spin that information when we do social engineering. So I'm basically talking about targeted social engineering attacks and how, not necessarily like how we do them, but how we do them. I don't want to like ruin give away all our TTPs, but in terms of like the approach, how a lot of information found online that customers don't see as they don't see any risk exposing might have an underlying risk in terms of people like me performing targeted attacks against them. So that's like the theme of today's stream. We'll go through a bunch of different information gathering resources. Some paid, some free. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of them. That's going to be a long stream. No, I guess nobody really knows all of them, right? We all have different sort of skill set, or we all know different resources and probably use different resources on a day-to-day basis. And after I talked about the information gathering itself, all of that will be will be very specific to how that information acts in the social engineering environment or engagement. Okay. So I'll just get started. I mean, there's no point of waiting, I guess. We're 5 minutes into the stream, so some people might join later and catch up. No worries. So let me first of all test if this Kali VM works. Hey, it works, and it looks about right, doesn't it? Let me just... Oh yeah, it looks perfect. Great. Got that trusted second wallpaper as well. Okay, great. So, one resource that I like to use to sort of... well, it's technically you're doing domain enumeration, but it also gives you an impression of the size of the company. Can give you impression of what services the company is exposing externally just based on the host names. And in some instances, they use this service, or this service will give you insight. Hey, this service will give you insight into potentially infrastructure related to the internal network, depending on how they do it, right? So there's this great resource called cert.sh, and I realize a lot of you people know this. This isn't going to be like a brain eye-opening moment for all of you, but so search.sh basically allows you to search in the metadata that is added to certificates. So certificates, you have different fields that contain information, and a lot of that information can be really useful in terms of when doing like in terms of figuring out what the company's up to, what the services they expose, and internal host names and stuff. So let's just say, let's just take a company. I'm gonna take. I'll just pick a Norwegian company. It's a cell phone provider, just because it's interesting. And again, this is open information, right? So we're not doing anything illegal here. We're just browsing publicly exposed information, and we can see that. So the way TLS or HTTPS HTTP encryption works is that the server you're going through, like, so when you go to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any other most sites on the internet these days. On the left side, hand, or the left hand top, oh my god, English is hard. On the top left corner of the URL bar, you'll see this, you know, if you're in Firefox, you will see this shield. I think in Chrome, it's like a green check mark or something. Basically means that the website you are on utilizes a valid HTTP certificate or TLS certificate. And that basically means that the network traffic going from you to the website is encrypted. So if I were performing a man-in-the-middle attack and I was watching that HTTPS traffic, I wouldn't be able to make out the password, usernames, or credit card information or whatever going on the network. And the way it works is that that certificate has to be provided by a certificate authority, usually, that is publicly exposed or that is recognized as a valid certificate authority. So a very common one, it's Let's Encrypt, right? So if I were to create a website, I would create the website, I would create the infrastructure, I would like deploy my WordPress site or whatever, and then I would request Let's Encrypt. I would request a certificate from Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt would validate that I own the website. Usually that's like setting a DNS record or hosting a file. Just a way to Let's Encrypt to actually confirm that you own where the domain name is pointing. You own the infrastructure behind it. If that gets confirmed, you get your certificate. I can publicly expose that. And now every time a user visits my website, they're using HTTPS, and the website or the browser you're using accepts that certificate is sort of it's an accepted, respected certificate or whatever. It's not self-signed. It's publicly signed or signed by CA. And that process is public. That's like that exposing is public information, which services like crt.sh logs and indexes for me to search through. So what I'm viewing here is just HTTP certificates that are assigned different services attached to the Telenor root domain name, right? So if I just go through this, let's just look at this and see what we can make out. So okay, they use obviously some sort of okay, in this case it's a bit weird because, you know, Telenor is both an email provider and a service provider in terms of telephones and stuff, so this might be their own sort of email stuff, but this definitely indicates that they use Microsoft as an email provider, either by hosting their own Exchange server or OVA or something like that. They basically have email exposed, so I know that they use Office 365 as an email provider. It's also fair now to assume that they might use Outlook as a mail application. Obviously, that's not going to be the case every time. If they use, it's not necessarily going to be the case. But you know, if they use some other third-party email hosting, like, you know, I think GoDaddy offers a dedicated email hosting provider, or dedicated email hosting. You know, that might indicate that they don't use Outlook. So when I'm preparing my email phishing attack against this, I'm going to assume Outlook, right? There's also a bunch of others there. They have some sort of IAM. I would assume this is some sort of content management software for IAM that is externally exposed. So, or it might not be externally exposed, it might be internally, but at least the HTTP certificate was requested externally by Bypass AS, which is I think looks to be a Norwegian CA. Anyhow, okay, so I know they have some sort of IAM service or endpoint related to IAM. I could investigate this endpoint further by resolving the domain name, right? We have a chat, so I'm assuming that's going to be like customer servers, stuff like that. And there's a bunch of other stuff you can try to make out based on this. This is all Norwegian key phrases related to like football and tennis and golf and all that kind of stuff. So they might be doing sponsoring programs for like local clubs. Red. Okay, this is interesting. So red.telenor.no. What is that? Okay, that got me curious. What is that? Okay, so just redirect. So maybe it's an internal service that is publicly redirected to their website to be sure. There's a bunch of other stuff here you can go through. And this, you know, gives you an impression of the size of the company, what sort of infrastructure they're running. If a lot of these don't resolve, that if a lot of these don't resolve publicly, the domains might indicate that they use, you know, a lot of these services on the internal network use public CAs, and therefore we can map them. So if I were to get access to the internal network, I might try resolving these against a local DNS server to see what these services are, you know, might give you intel. And overall, I think the biggest takeaway here is the size. Like, it's a good impression of how big the company is in terms of infrastructure. Okay, so these guys are big. Obviously, there's a lot of information here. Well, this is interesting. So these are, you know, looks to be production environments. SAS might be related to the. When I hear SAS, I'm thinking about the flight or the like charter company SAS. There looks to be like the old panel, SFTP server exposed maybe, test.pacman, maybe residue from some sort of development gig or something like that. Yeah, might be a lot of interesting stuff to go through here. Gives you an impression, that's it. Okay, so at this point, you know a lot of domain names basically, right? You enumerated a bunch of subdomain names, maybe even some third-party domains if they cross-sign certificates for the service or for this company. What to do now? So most of you have probably heard of Google Docs, and we're going to talk a little bit about Google Docs. But I'm going to try to find a Google Docs cheat sheet here, just on the side. Okay, I guess this is a pretty decent one to explain what Google Docs is, right? So if you didn't know about Google Docs, the quick introduction is Google allows you to search for information, right? It's a giant service that indexes a bunch of information across the internet, then you can search for it. So if I were to search for a cup, whatever, right? Or Telenor, right? I will find a lot of services most likely related to Telenor. But there are something called dorks, which are basically search operators. So there's specific search operators within Google that you can use to pull out specific information. So let's say I want to get information from just the site Telenor, right? I could do something like this. And that way I know that everything that's down here is going to be all 2,400 results are going to be in the root site Telenor.no, right? If I wanted to target the sub-site, that's chat of Telenor.no, I could search for that, no hits on that. I could pick some of the other ones, doesn't really matter. If you want to include any subdomain, you can just do Telenor.no, and then you have search results directly related to Telenor. Cool. Okay. What can you do with this? Well, now we can look for files. So you can look for cache documents, might not even still be alive, based on their file type. So PDF is a really common one. Let's look for, okay, there's no PDF hosted by Telenor. I'll just use trustedsec.com then. Wait, am I drunk? Oh, it's because of these, right? Oh, it's a .pdf? I literally did this yesterday. Okay, sorry, it's just the @ marks. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's go back to Telenor. Right, so I can search for all PDF documents hosted on the Telenor main site, right? And why are PDF documents interesting? Well, PDF documents can be interesting for a lot of reasons. The most useful, like there's two like major useful things about documents in general, and maybe PDF specifically as well. One, the metadata. The metadata, I guess we can pull one of these and I can show you, but the metadata in the PDF documents usually tell me what operating system, you know, it's a Mac, was this PDF created on a Mac or a Windows machine. It can tell me when the document was created. It can tell me what sort of software we used to create the document. And it can also, in some instances, depending on the file format or depending on how the document was created, say the document was created through an Adobe software and exported to PDF, it can actually tell me the local path, that the local path where the PSD, the actual Photoshop file was opened, and that path is full, so I can tell the username. I can tell the computer account name based on that path. Again, not like super sensitive or key information, but definitely useful information to have in a social engineering engagement, right? So that's the metadata. But my favorite thing is all the themed documents. Is companies today, especially maybe sales, maybe some manuals, those sort of related documents usually have themed data in them, meaning that they have logos, banners, the correct font that the company likes to use. All sort of a bunch of graphical elements that the company uses both internally, externally, when sending out to to their customers, when sending documents between each other internally. And me having access to all these themed graphical elements makes it really, really easy for me to come up with my own document or email or application or whatever that looks legitimate, because I know that, okay, when they send PDFs internally, that's the banner they use, and that this is the font they use, and this is the colors they use for the background sections in the tables, and like it's, you know what I mean? Everything today, especially for like mid to large size companies, are themed, and you can use a lot of that information when performing social engineering engagement over, I would say, especially email, right? And I did that on engagement not so long ago. We'll talk more about that engagement later. I'll guess I'll finish up the stream with that story. Right? So that's really, really neat. I love doing that. So let's, just to show you, I pull a PDF and I'll, okay, so this is interesting. So this is some sort of PDF documents related to Microsoft Synchronization MSS. And it was released for under the development subdomain for Telenor.no, which means that it might be intended for, might be an internal document, we don't know. And this is another thing. Notice how this document is cached. I'm not even touching the target's website at this point. I'm just downloading the document from Google itself because Google has it cached. So this is a great way to perform sort of passive information gathering against the target. Where you just download documents straight from their website, without even touching their website, because Google got it all cached. This is super useful, right? So this document in itself doesn't have any sort of, doesn't seem to have anything themed. Let's, if you can see some other documents, so let's check these. No theming. Okay, this one is more themed. So you know, this blue color might be specific for their company. There again, that blue color would be specific for their links. This font might be able to reverse that and figure out what font they use internally or in their documents. Let's just be, I guess, a bit careful. Like, all of this is public information, so this is not illegal by any means, right? Okay, this is great. I know I can now use that logo. Great. Okay, this is another great one. Okay, so notice the dark blue back color. The highlighted text in specific blue, the blue graphical instruments for the like. Okay, this is great. Let's say I wanted to create an evil Excel document, like a typical macro document, right? And I want to tell them, follow these steps: enable content, enable editing, then enable content, right? You bet your ass I'm going to use these circles. I'm going to cut out these circles, and I'm going to use them in that document. Looks themed, looks official as fuck, in my opinion, right? Great graphical stuff I can use. Let's try to just find another document that like might indicate that it contains some sort of. Okay, so this is interesting. This is a document related to digital security. It's obviously well made, so it was definitely made in some I'm not gonna say definitely, but the odds of this being made in some sort of Adobe software is high. Let's download this PDF. Let's download this PDF to PDF, and let's just copy that out to our desktop here. And then let's see, do I have EXIF tool installed? Nope, I need to install EXIF tool. So EXIF tool is a way to or maybe it's okay, it seems to be included in Kali, so I'll do that instead. Okay, we'll just unzip this target.js style. And I'm open for judgment and not knowing the target.js unzip command by heart. Like, I'm all there, just judge me. That's image EXIF. Am I that drunk? Okay, let's just see if it works. Okay, so it worked. This is great. let me tell you the information. So I know that this PDF document was created on a Macintosh. I know that this PDF document was created using Adobe InDesign 6.2. I know so this is the exact date when it was created. This is the PDF library used from creating it out from Adobe InDesign. I'm not going to say this was a great example, but at least we know that some part of the Telenor design team uses Mac, which isn't surprising. I guess a lot of designers use Mac, right? Again, this depending on the document you pull, might contain different sort of information. This might have not been... This was definitely scanned, so this is not that interesting. Signatures. Yep, people exposing signatures. That ain't great. Could definitely be used for a phishing campaign. Again, this is all public information. Not doing anything shady here at all. But again, you know, we're pulling information from publicly available resources, and we're using that to do our hack string. There's a bunch of other keywords you can look at. I'll post this cheat sheet in the chat so you can look at it. But there's also other file types you can use. I believe XLXS is supported. Yeah, okay. So this is some sort of... Okay, I can't open this because I don't have it. Let's try docx. I think txt files are supported. There's a bunch of file types that are supported by default. This is just the robots.txt. Might not be interesting. I think zip is supported. I also think buck is supported. I'm not sure. Okay. Basically, there's a bunch of file types that are supported, and there's a bunch of ways you can twist this using the cheat sheet I shared. Basically, a lot of interesting stuff here. Yeah. So this is a big one. This is extension based instead of the file type, which seems to have support for more endpoints or more file types. PDF. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here we can download. Yeah, okay. Cool. So that's the Google Dorks part. Okay, so let's say we covered a bunch of domains, of course. We found a bunch of services. We found a bunch of documents that may aid us in creating our pretext. Some of these documents also might tell us, you know, what sort of VPN software you use. It's definitely not uncommon to find instructions for setting up your VPN connection exposed. That will tell me, do you use, you know, Cisco AnyConnect, do you use Global Protect, what's it called, Palo Alto VPN, whatever, what sort of VPN do you use, right? And what I often find very interesting in those PDFs is that the screenshots, because remember, these PDFs are usually created by somebody on a workstation in the environment, and their screenshots can leak a lot of information, like what EDR solution they are using, what AV solution instead of EDR in that case they are using, any other software on the machine that is very specific, and I might be able to play off during a pretext. And the way you see them, you know, is often through, okay, so they wanna show you that they're connecting to the VPN in the screenshot, so they screenshot the top right or the bottom right corner in the window screen, right? And you see all the like the icons, the taskbar icons there, might indicate what sort of software they're running, and especially what EDR or AV solution they're running, which is really handy knowledge for an attacker, right? And that also might indicate do they use Outlook, what other email client do they use, and so forth. So it's really interesting, and it's really like just it always amazes me how much information you can pull from, you know, just using Google Dorks and specific file types, and what sort of information you can pull from it. Okay, so you have a bunch of information that you can use to generate the pretext, but you don't have any targets, right? So there are a bunch of sites that I use for finding emails and finding user information related to the emails. One of them is hunter.io, which is, let's do Telenor again, which is basically an email indexing service, just like Google, but just for emails. So I can type in the company name, it will give me, you know, okay, I found 59 email addresses, unique email addresses, scoured across a bunch of public resources. Usually, this also lists the sources, which is interesting. Might be able to use this to find other domains or sites related to your company that isn't directly affiliated with it, you know. And obviously it gives you a bunch of emails, which is really interesting. And then there's this. So an email pattern. Why is an email pattern interesting for an attacker? Well, if I know your email pattern, I basically know how to turn 90% of all the names I found. You know, there's going to be some weird ones, but 80 to 90% of all the names I find, I can turn them into emails with the email pattern. So an email pattern is, you know, for me, it would be, it could be Melvin.Langvik, it could be Melvin L, it could be L Melvin, you know, whatever sort of combination of stuff. So I'm just switching over to the multi-chat here. I can't see that last question for some reason. So somebody asked, I can't see to make out the name, Paul. What are some unconventional phishing campaigns you have used besides email campaigns? So there's one really cool one that I'm going to talk about at the end of the stream. So at the end of the stream, I'm basically going to talk to you guys about a very, very anonymized version of an engagement I had, and one of the things I used from the information gathering phase. Yeah, of course, you can also password spray from that info. I use this all the time when I'm performing password spraying attacks. This would be very specific. Now this is just sort of, this context right here is very specific to phishing or social engineering, not password spraying. But yeah, definitely, this is a resource I use for password spraying as well, or for gathering emails for password spraying. Another really cool resource when we're at the when we're doing emails here is that, so there are usually ways to enumerate what is a valid email and what is not. So if the company has an open web, like a OWA web, I think it's like Outlook web application exposed, there's a timing attack that you could use to validate an email. It's definitely not stealthy. It's noisy. And you can use that to validate emails. So if you have a bunch of usernames that you don't like this, I would pull out these 59 emails and I would run them through a domain enumeration tool. We have an internal one, but I would use, you know, for you would just use any domain enumeration tool, and you would find that maybe just 50 of those are valid. Maybe 9 of those employees are old or quit or whatever. But there's another thing you can do, which is really cool, which I don't know if a lot of people know. So there's something called statistically, oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this. Statistically possible names or something on GitHub. My god. Maybe I actually have a writing and spelling disability, who knows. Statistically likely usernames. Likely usernames. Names, I guess it is. There we go. This one. This is a great one. So on GitHub, there's a repo called statistically likely usernames. And they have a bunch of basically pre-created dictionaries with basically the email of using a bunch. So they have a bunch of pre-generated statistically likely usernames in different dictionaries in different styles. So if I know that your company uses the John, just the like the first name, or John and the two first characters of your last name, or John and the first character of your last name in your email address, I can use these dictionaries to sort of brute force enumerate a bunch of possible emails. And I use this all the time. This is a great TTP if you didn't know about it. So basically I would pull down, let's say, John S, right? Which is John, and then S is for his last name Smith, which is the example. And I would just append their email at the end here, and I would brute spray this towards using a domain enumeration tool, or like an email enumeration tool, I should say, sorry. And then it will tell me, you know, out of these, how many thousand names is it? It's like, out of these 43,000 emails, 500 of them are valid. 500 of them gave a response indicating that they are valid. Now, is this stealthy? Fuck no, it isn't. You know, depending on the, obviously, the email enumeration technique you use, if you're using an exposed login portal, they're going to see the login attempts. They're going to see a bunch of login attempts that aren't valid for any sort of email accounts. So it's definitely not stealthy. But if you start to argue, what do you lose about this? I mean, if I do this through like an IP rotating proxy, Fireprox, or some other, you know, third-party VPN provider, whatever, okay, they know that somebody's actively enumerating their users, but I mean, in the context of today's harsh environment of the internet, doesn't that happen like on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? I mean, enumerating domains emails doesn't necessarily stand out with the amount of attacks going on these days. I would say that companies like, depending on their size, almost always are, they're always exposed to the elements of people trying to hack them and password spray them and enumerate them and whatever. So even though this is not stealthy, it doesn't really give up that much. I mean, yeah, but that's one way of performing email enumeration that I haven't seen too much on the internet, really. Maybe it's just me, but yeah. So that's really cool. Another one that is also, I guess, known at this point. So, let's talk about a bit how this works and why this tool is, sort of in a gray zone, I would say, but also claim legitimate. But so what happens is that when websites get hacked on the internet, right? I'm talking shitty forums or semi-shitty websites. Stuff like, MyFitnessPal comes to mind. When they get hacked by hackers, the databases are very often extracted. So it obviously depends on what the hacker does. Sometimes they might extort the company, try to extort the company for money. If you don't give me money, I'll upload this database to Google. You're done. We're going to share it. Everybody's password out. You're going to have a giant leak on your hand. If they don't extort them, or if they just simply, the company is not extortable in terms that they don't give a fuck, they're going to take it. I guess then they end up selling this database. They sell it online, dark web, deep web, whatever. They sell it on shitty hacking forums for Bitcoin or Monero, and they and just sell them off. And then the people buying them will use them to try to use the accounts for specific companies in those databases to use them. So let's say MyFitnessPal, right? There's definitely going to be a lot of company addresses in there. A lot of people using their company email address, and often their company password or the same password they use for the company accounts to register on MyFitnessPal. And that way, when the hackers get access to the database of MyFitnessPal, they'll dump out interesting companies and they'll try to password spray with those passwords. That's called a password stuffing attack, where you use passwords from previous databases to spray services and hoping that the user used those passwords across services with their same email. So that database basically gets sold on. Hackers do that. They extract information and they try to use it to gain money or some other, hack some other site. And as more as this go on, at some point the database gets saturated, right? It gets leached. Nobody want to buy a database that everybody already has because the information in the database is no longer exclusive. There's a low probability that there's a bunch of existing accounts in there that are still valid in terms of password email combinations. So it just gets leaked at some point. At some point, it just becomes public information, some way or another. If it's sold between people and to the point where it's not interesting anymore, so it's publicly uploaded by somebody, or if it's just publicly uploaded for the fuck of it instantly, at some point it becomes public information. And when it becomes public information, me as a security tester can also use that information. My understanding is, as long as I don't pay for it, as long as I don't contribute to the hacking, obviously the database, as long as I can get a hold of that information through publicly exposed resources, then it's fine, good to go. And this is what Dhash does. So Dhash is a service that collects all these databases, indexes them, and then provides an API for us to search and look up that information. Now, there's a bunch of these services, right? These sort of data breach lookup services. One that you might recall is Have I Been Pwned, right? Which is the one that I guess everybody knows of. That service only allows you to get alerted if there's a new breach, or query information, query information about your email by confirming it and so forth. So it can't be used to look up anybody else's email, right? It can't be abused in that sense. Well, Dhash and a bunch of other services that are out there, they allow you to do that. So I can search for any email or piece of string I want in this, and this will return me all the data, like the columns or data sets in their database with that information. So I'm not logged in right now, so it's not going to show me anything. But if I type telenor.no, if I could type Telenor, what am I? Okay, so they don't allow free searches anymore. That sucks. Yeah, okay. Basically, you can search up stuff, and they will give you back the email address for that had like a substring matching, which database it was founded in, so where the breach originated from, and in almost all cases, it will also give you back the password used in that database. So for me, I would search up the company domain name in this site, and it will give me all the emails attached to that company domain. And I now have a bunch of emails that I knew were valid at some point, right? Because they're in the databases, they have had to, at some point somebody had to have used them in the service. There's a high likelihood that most of them are going to be valid email addresses. And in some cases, I even get valid passwords, right? Personally, I know people have experienced this before. I have never personally experienced a password coming directly from a site like this being valid on engagements. But just looking at the passwords can often give you an impression of what sort of password strength we're looking at, right? If a bunch of the passwords from these data breaches for a specific user were like their dog's name 2017, their daughter's name 2017, whatever, that might be a good indication that their current password is 2021 or some sort of extension of that password, right? Passwords change and they grow as time goes on, so we might be able to take that information and use that when password spraying further. But in reality, I use this mostly to gather email addresses from exposed databases. Now, this is where's that, like the FAQ here? There's a bunch of like security logs and privacy questions you can ask. You're more, I guess I can go. One could argue that this service operates in the gray area, right? In the gray zone. Because you might argue that this service gives a lot of hackers access to the same information I'm accessing. And I would argue that the hackers would get this information anyway. And I would argue that a lot of legitimate companies and services performing testing can get ahead of these hackers by also doing it. Like if I were to run a company, I would 100% query this database every week to look for new breaches, to look for new leaks, and to get ahead of my password auditing policy and what users that I have that might have weak passwords and stuff like that. So used by both sides. But yeah, this is a great resource. We use their API, or I use their API, I should say. I have like a little Python tool that just wraps around their API so I can query stuff and filter them out and get the useful information from it. It's not expensive at all. I think it's like $5 a week or something. I'm not going to like endorse it or recommend it, but this is a service I use sometimes to look up emails. So note that, I guess. Okay. So the last sort of major resource we'll talk about before I go into the attack path or the attacks portion of the Twitch stream What, I can't talk. Is of course LinkedIn, right? And again, might sound trivial, it might sound stupid, but LinkedIn is one of those gold mines for attackers. I mean, LinkedIn, you create yourself a profile, you tell me what your name is, where you live, what you do, where you do what you do, what other places you have done what you do. Like you're giving me like a full trail, like a full history trail of information I can look up when targeting you specifically as an attacker. Now, am I saying that everybody should just delete their LinkedIn account? Well, no. I mean, obviously people use their LinkedIn account to connect with people and to get new jobs and get seen and whatever. Much like Twitter, I guess. But there's definitely a risk involved, and I think that what I do is that I have a fake LinkedIn account that I use that looks legitimate, and I connect with a few people in the target's company, right? So I'll befriend them, I'll connect with them. What happens with LinkedIn is that as soon as somebody connects with you, you can certainly see all their connections again. You can find information related to all their connections within that company again. So when you're using internal tools and such, we can scrape LinkedIn for information related to specific companies. And that way I know, John Smith works in HR and he has been working for HR for 3 years. And before that he worked there and he's located in fucking New York, right? Key information for me, not necessarily because I didn't know that person was already working there, but I know where he works, I know what department he works, I know what building within if it's a big if it's a big company, they might have a bunch of corporate offices around US. I know which corporate office they work in, so I can play that into my cards when I do the phishing or the call or whatever, the social engineering attack. Again, all information related to this can usually be used to when you make can be used when you make decisions. You know, should I call? Should I email? Should I target HR first? Should I target HR spread across the country? You know, we could really go that route. So LinkedIn is proper gold. I always use LinkedIn. Top 3, like, yeah. So I like to say that, you know, your LinkedIn profile should be locked down to the point where, you know, people browsing can't really see anything about you. Maybe just your name. And then be careful about who you accept connections with. I don't see a reason to blatantly accept absolutely anybody wanting to have a connection with you on LinkedIn. If they're not in your field, if you don't know them through somebody, if they're not, I'm not saying if you're not known, I'm not gonna accept you, but like, just be careful when you connect to people. Like, it's definitely a thing. It's targeted, but it's definitely a thing. So know that. Okay, so that's sort of the information gathering stuff I wanted to talk about. Now I'm going to talk more about how I use that information to develop a pretext, and how to do that, right? So my major advice is, again, that every piece of information you gather can be used to make your decisions, basically, right? If your information gathering indicates that they're email filtering or whatever, like let's say they have proof point email filtering or whatever it's called, right? And you're having a hard time getting around that by replicating it in your lab or testing against somebody you know have it or whatever, you by history you know that you're having a hard time getting around that, do a call instead, you know? When you're picking out the targets, be sure maybe you want to pick out a target that doesn't work directly related to each other. Maybe you want to hit a couple of people from in the same department but from different geographical locations in the US, so they don't end up talking about that during the lunch, right? During lunch, hey, did you get that email? No, I didn't get that email. Did everybody get that email? That looks really fishy to me. I don't think you should click that, etc. Right? So again, how do you want to approach the targets, and where how does their geographical location impact it? What they work, how long they have been working somewhere can really impact something. I guess there's arguments to be made. You know, if targeting somebody who has been working at the company for 8 years compared to a couple of months, but I would definitely call somebody who's only been working there for a couple of months than call somebody who's been working there for 8 years. The first couple of months or weeks, the first couple of weeks and months you're working at a company, you're still getting into stuff, you're still selling in, you're still getting emails and calls by people in different departments having to run through stuff with you, right? Giving a call to somebody who's been working at giving a call to somebody who's only been working a couple of months makes more sense in terms of, hey, I'm calling from blah blah blah, I'm blah blah blah, I see that you have tried to configure your multi-factor authentication solution, but I think you did something wrong. Could you just confirm this notification I'm sending you? So your YouTube channel doesn't have your vids. What's up with that? No, they have. Okay, so that would be much more somebody who just started working there, who just in fact set up their multi-factor authentication might be much. You might argue that it's easier to target them, So about the YouTube channel stuff, somebody sent me a Twitter DM about this. Can you see these videos fine? Is this something? Can somebody else confirm that my YouTube channel is accessible? That YouTube hasn't restricted down my YouTube videos or something? That'd be great. I can access them, but I can't seem to see that they have been deleted. They're getting views. Yeah, somebody check that real quick. Okay, he can see it. I'm guessing this is something on your end, man. Maybe you're on the wrong YouTube channel? YouTube/C/Flangvik? Yeah, okay. Anyways, so you might argue that specific people in specific circumstances, I can link the videos. You might indicate that specific people during specific circumstances are easier to target social engineering wise than others, and I suggest you use that information to build it. Now, let's say we're doing an email. We decided on doing an email fish because we have decent information, suggests that we can get that done pretty safely. We have a couple of targets. How do you come up with a pretext and how do you graph that out? Well, first of all, I would look at the information you gathered previously again, and I would say, okay, in this PDF, I have a bunch of graphical information. I have banners, I have fonts, I have colors. Okay, let's create an email based out of that. I've also, in the story I'm about to tell later, I found HTML templates publicly exposed for their password reset functionality, for their welcome to this company functionality, and I was able to just rip that HTML straight out and put it into an email, sprinkle some stuff on top, and I got my email phishing attack ready. A lot of times stuff is, you can just use the information out there. I would say the more graphical elements, the more coloring, fonts, and the more stuff you can match to companies coming from them, or to emails coming from them, or to internal documents, the better. I mean, yeah, give them a feel that this is legitimate. I guess you're trying to sell a story, right? So I send them as HTML. So one thing to be very specific about is that when you're sending stuff targeting Outlook has like a specific way to render HTML, and they have a bunch of specific CSS tags. So even though your email renders fine in let's say Thunderbird or Spark or some other email client, it doesn't mean that it's going to render on Outlook. So when I target specific people, I actually use Outlook. Like I create an email template, I open it in Outlook, I'll send it through Outlook, because that way I know that what I'm seeing is what the guy on the other end or the girl on the other end receiving the email is going to see. When doing targeted email operations, I don't see a reason to use GoFish or anything like that. GoFish, I would say, is more related to doing mass sends of emails to get statistics. So another technical thing about emails is that avoid. It depends. When it comes to the domain stuff, depending on the size of the company and the maturity of the company, they might do active threat intel. So you might not want to try typo squatting. You might want to avoid creating domains that are related to them in any way, because they're going to pick up on it. Had that happen to me, where I create the domain name -API or API - the company name, or whatever, support - company name, something simple like that, and they pick up on it obviously because they're running threat intel actively, so they get alerts when new domains are registered with their substring or the company domain in it. And then they can issue a takedown notice. They can just block it, because they don't know what it is. Did somebody create this, etc. So sometimes you might want to just go with like a generic stuff, some sort of service or support domain that is super generic. Maybe even some sort of a domain related to the services that they use. Like, do they use a third-party service provider? Maybe you want to spoof that, buy that domain and look like that, right? So even though you're not attacking the third-party provider, it's not illegal to register domains that look like specific. Like yeah, you can still do that. You might get taken down, obviously, but you can still do it. It's not like you're gonna get the cops at your place, especially not when it's paid and legal attack. Okay, again, so I'm just gonna talk about this gig I did, and how the information gathering phase affected how we did stuff. So we targeted the company. I can't really tell that much about it, right? It's all NDA stuff. So anonymized, we targeted the company, semi big one, I guess. In the US it would be small, 8,000 to 9,000 employees. I did a lot of information gathering. I found a bunch of, I talked about the HTML templates for their password reset functionality for a system, a bunch of PDFs with graphical illustrations, banners, themes, fonts, that sort of stuff. And I ended up creating an email around a product that exists. So it's, how do I want to say this? So basically, they were an Office 365 dependent company. They had a bunch of hybrid solutions attached to Azure and on-prem. So I knew that I could sell, or I could try to build a pretext around technology in that area, because their users would be familiar with it, right? I created an email telling them that they had to enroll a specific security product provided by Microsoft. So I sort of in the targets. So wow, I can't speak today. I'm so sorry. So in the what I wanted to do basically was that when the target read the email, they saw a product that is legitimate. If they googled the product name, they would find that this is an actual product delivered by Microsoft. It would make sense that that product is rolled out for their to their company, because again, their company is highly dependent on Office 365. I themed it to look pretty legitimate, and I targeted a few users, and I made it I made it feel specific to them. So it would be, you know, their name, blah blah blah, information, the actual TTP that would trigger the, in this case, it would be an Excel macro, which is very, you know, very common, but it still works, sadly. And you know, I would send that out to some specific users. I would do it using I wouldn't say I directly used typo squatting, but the domain I used had their company domain as a substring in it, and therefore looked legitimate. It was hard to spot. I deployed all the information related to the email, so if all the metadata, and attached it to Microsoft. So if, you know, if they hovered over the icon, they would see information that would make sense for them. It would look legitimate, etc. Right? That's the technical aspect of it. The pretext again was based on an existing Microsoft product that existed. I knew they didn't have it. I knew that it would make sense that they would get it. Blah blah blah. Basically, they had to click a button. Once they clicked the button, an Excel document would appear. That Excel document would also be themed, heavily themed, using their color scheme, their font, their banners. It will extract them to the classic enable editing, enable content. Yeah, no worries, man. You know, extracting them to enable editing, enable content. Once they had done that, my stuff would be deployed. I think I used Cobalt Strike for this instance. And you know, they will also get the message telling them, hey, thank you for successfully enrolling, and also thank you for keeping company name secure. So you know, I would sort of tease the I guess, you know, it's sort of trolling from my perspective, but from their perspective, they're doing what they're told from a product that is legitimate. They're doing things correctly, and they're getting a confirmation that they did it correctly, to avoid them having to ask questions or forward it to me or to somebody else, right? To avoid dialogue, to avoid suspicion. You know, and here comes the interesting part. So I did that. I got control of a series of workstations. The access I had through the workstations were rather limited in terms of that definitely wasn't limited, but they were working from home, right? So they used VPN, so getting access to the internal network was a bit of a pain. So I ended up creating a little aggressor script to alert me whenever a new network interface was detected, so I could like jump on and start querying the domain controllers and stuff when the VPN connection got connected. So they connected to VPN, I got my alert, I jumped on, I was able to query the LDAP for some information related to interesting user groups, computers, stuff like that. And I was there for quite solid amount of time on these workstations undetected. And then we decided that for us to get the foothold and the access we want, since all these users basically never were on the VPN connection more than a couple of hours at a time, it would take far longer than what we had left on the time of the engagement to do anything, and therefore we decided to do a phone call. And this is interesting. So what we did is that we decided, or I guess really it was me, I decided to vish, or you know, voice phishing over the phone, basically a member of the service desk team. So somebody working at IT, somebody who sits at the service desk and picks up calls and answers tickets. And we targeted the individual, and I created a pretext where the person who calling would be working at the security engineering team. He would be, you know, his name would be somebody who actually worked at the company. The pretext what I thought was really cool. So what we did, we found out that these workstations all use the same EDR solution. And then we built a pretext that said, hey, your EDR solution, so we're telling the service desk guy this, your EDR solution has stopped working. You know, we haven't received a callback from you in like a week. We think it's related to like a policy we pushed last week. After that, we stopped getting callbacks. So I need your help to like manually repair your EDR installation. I can't do this remotely over SCCM for whatever reason, right? And I created a fake application in Visual Studio, like a Windows GUI application, that would basically be the repair tool for that EDR agent. So I smacked in like a long text box with the terms of service. I switched out, I gave it a random version number, progress bar, start button, checkbox, all that stuff, right? So it was basically like EDR name, repair, blah blah blah, right? And we that worked. We called the service desk guy up and we told him, hey, you need to repair your EDR solution. Could you download this and do it? Basically, not, we didn't say it like that, but that's the gist of it. He downloaded the fake application, he ran it, he got the confirmation screen, the progress bar moved to full, and we were like, okay, give it a second. We got a call back on the Couple Strike beacon, and we told him, hey, it worked great. We can see you on the EDR solution again. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Blah blah blah. Ended the call. Didn't know nothing. A couple of hours later, we had full control of everything. You know, the guy being a service desk user, obviously had I think it was tier 2 permissions on the network. So you know, once we had his user account, it was pretty easy to move to a couple of servers and find the domain admin that was logged onto the server that shouldn't be. We hijacked the sessions and got full access within a couple of hours. And you know, ultimately that led to the customer having to tighten up their training, and obviously the EDR solution as well, which didn't detect any of this, which was really bad. But yeah, that's my best example of how to use information gathering in all stages. So we used information gathering in the first initial access stage, and then in another post-exploitation stage, we used the same information gathering technique to find this EDR solution that we know everybody used. And we created a pretext surrounding that information, and we performed a post-exploitation task of hacking or social engineering this service desk employee to giving us up access to his computer and owning the customer from that. So that's, I mean, it may sound stupid, you know, but when I like to say that you gotta remember that the people working, you know, generally everybody who does their job isn't to constantly be on high alert and be sure they don't get tricked by somebody on the phone. Right? Their job is to do whatever they were hired to do with the high efficiency while smiling and getting paid. So you know, they don't want to be hassled. They don't want to be the guy who says no to repairing the EDR solution, so they have to send away their workstation for repair, right? They just want to be the guy who, of course, I can help you with that. Sure, what you want me to do, right? I think that's important to remember. That the people we are targeting are just trying to do their job. They're not. I'm not saying that, you know, he shouldn't have asked us any critical questions. You know, like, who are you, and can I call you up under your phone number here? Can I, like, some companies, very few, but some companies implement like a code word of the day. So you know, if you don't know that code word, you're not an employee here, and therefore they can tell the social engineering attempts over the phone from others. The best one I would just say is, you know, like I said, telling whoever was calling you, you know, can I call you up on your mobile phone number? And then you use the mobile phone number accessible through, you know, his email account on the internal network or whatever, right? Try to turn the table a bit, but it's hard. I mean, when doing targeted social engineering and stuff, I don't really expect anybody else. Yeah, and as a result, it's not really fair to blame them for that. That doesn't mean you can't educate, but firing for clicking a fish or something doesn't make sense to me. No, it definitely doesn't make sense. I have yet to work with a company who does that. I have yet to work with a company who fires people for clicking a fish. And I like to say that, you know, when it comes to phishing, you should focus on the people actually reporting the fish. Yeah, if somebody clicks, something can happen. But if somebody reports, that's the exact same thing turned back at me. If I'm an advanced attacker, I deploy infrastructure months in advance. I buy domains and I let them age, so I categorize them, right? I do all the correct stuff. But if I send you a phishing email and you report it, and the people who receive that report, either the incident response team or whatever, who sees that report, if they take proper action, if they track down all the emails, if they track down whoever installed that file based on links or hash or whatever, if they block any egress and inbound communication from those domains that the mail was coming from, I'm set back to start like 0.0. Like all the work I did the last couple of months is now just burned. I have to start all over again, right? If you can focus on people reporting and take action from there instead of focusing on firing people who clicks, you know, that's just better. Just better. Sometimes I have to do non-targeted phishing campaigns, 500 plus users. Mailgun rate limit out the count to 100 million per hour to not be suspicious, I guess. I'm thinking of switching to SendGrid. What email sending service do you use, or do you create your own? So I think for not having done, you know, a bunch of 1,000+ users or 500+ users phishing attacks just to measure the statistics, I know that we use our own stuff. So we deploy our own email servers, and we try to use, you know, subnet ranges and IP ranges that are blacklisted as email servers and stuff like that. At least that's how I know we do it. That's what my understanding right now. Nothing gave me empathy and humility as much as falling for an internal phishing exercise from a predator to food. Yeah, that's fair. I think social engineering, I mean, exploiting human behavior, exploiting the human brain, whatever, however deep you ever want to go, is always going to be something that exists. You're never going to hit 100%. You can train and you can gamify and you can do whatever you want to try to get. Obviously, you want to try to reach your 100%, right? You want to try to make every employee aware that phishing campaigns and calls happen, avoid them. But at some point, you know, with enough persistency, somebody's always going to click or input or download and run at some point. And that's where you want to have the entire sort of, and that's when the other controls kick in. That's when your technical controls kick in. That's where your incident response, I guess that isn't controlled, but your procedures and your playbook kick in, and your incident response kick in, and you kick my attacker ass basically. And I'm not gonna end on this, but one thing I like to say is that me as an attacker, I always have to play in your playground, right? You design the playground I'm attacking. When I'm an attacker, I jump into something I have no insight into. I have no idea. I have to step, you know, teeny bit at a time. And if I just misstep once, you know, in the idea world, you'll be able to nuke me. So that's like the main like what should I say, like that's one way to lift spirits basically, is to tell, you know, I'm attacking your playground. We're always going to be playing this game in your playground. You can do anything that can fuck me up, right? Tech number 2, MSL spray plus fire procs. On 365 is typically spray every 20 minutes, and sometimes I get a count spray to be locked. After a while, do you get this locked, and what time frequency do you spray? So when I spray on 365 accounts, I spray 45 minutes with the interval, and then I spray slow. So I spray maybe a couple of accounts a second, and then, you know, I sort of spray into those 45 minutes some of the time, depending on the size of the company. And that's just because, you know, the lockouts you're getting is most likely false positives. Maybe not on 20 minutes, but at least when you're doing them on 45 minutes a piece, those are false positives that Azure Smart Lockout triggers and gives you based on the password name. So you notice if you do real stupid passwords, which we still do, but if you do passwords like fall 2021 or change me or password 123, stuff like that, you will get a lot more false positive lockouts because Azure Smart Lockout decides that this is a spraying attack. So that's a good tip. Increase that sleep time and slow down the spray. There's no reason to like blast through 1,000 accounts in a minute. That's like if you graph it, that's like a giant spike of login attempts, which Azure Smart Lockout most likely is going to trigger on. In my experience, I suspect that there are things I need to improve, but due to sensitive concerns, it seems others aren't willing to teach me. But due to a sensitivity concerns, I don't quite get that question. So, code word of the day sounds interesting. Was the previous one? In my experience, I suspect there are things I need to improve, but due to sensitivity concerns, it seems others aren't willing to teach me. Feel free to elaborate on that, John. I didn't quite get the gist there. Yeah, no worries, Techno Bro. And I think, you know, clicking on phishing emails and going on and getting coaxed by a phishing call is human nature. It's always going to happen, and you just have to have technical controls in place to carry this. You have to have a playbook that, you know, works in terms of incident response. You have to have trained, like it's much, I wouldn't say it's much more important, but it's as important to train the people handling these tickets to take proper action. Like I've seen instances where I fish somebody, I get in, and then somebody else in the company report that fish, and then the ticket, the service desk people or incident response, wherever are handling those tickets, basically just say, this was the phishing attack, so glad, thank you for not like clicking on it, and then just closing the case. They don't follow up on how many people who got it. They don't follow up on what domain the email came from, what domain you were supposed to be redirected to capture credentials. Like they just leave it. Just, okay, it didn't happen then, right? When you get a report on somebody being phished, you have to assume that it's more than one, you know, most of the time. So yes, I get that it's hard to separate the non-targeted ones and the shitty ones, and you know, but still you have to take action. I think there are reasons they won't approach me about the concerns they have. And that could be anything. Security, computer performance, speaking from typical domain user. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what's in the context of Janner. So you're thinking, I'm trying. Could you take it from the top? I don't follow what you're trying to say. I'm so sorry. Are you saying that you, as a user, normal domain user, is not being approached enough because of sensitivity concerns? I don't get it. I'm sorry. You have to. I'm so sorry. I don't follow. Do you put the macro other loader as an attachment? So I almost never add the actual file as an attachment, because most of the time it gets you into more trouble than it gives you. Okay, as a blue team. Oh, okay. Okay, and speaking of the blue team. Okay, gotcha. I don't know, like we try to, obviously we don't, when it comes to giving away information post engagement, you know, we don't try to keep it all secret. A lot of the technical TTPs we try to not talk as much about, because it's a lot of our time and research spent. But we definitely try to give you a generic gist of it that will detect the same stuff. And a lot of the time, it's not related, but a lot of the time, you know, we do engagements for companies, and after the engagement, they request, you know, our binaries and stuff, and we're like, well, we know what's going to happen. We know that the EDR solution or antivirus solution is going to take those binaries, they're going to put the static signature on them, push it, and then they're going to say, we will definitely detect this from now to the customer. And in reality, you know, that's not the generic way to detect. That's not a generic way to detect anything, right? We can change the icon and rerun the same binary, and we're getting around it again. So you said that you used an extra macros in the example, but the new product Pretext sounded like it had nothing to do with the sheet or Excel. Wouldn't you match your Pretext better? I agree, maybe using Word would have been better there. I guess I went for, in that particular case, I think I went for Excel macros because I wanted to play around with the Excel 4.0 thingy, like the legacy macros that everybody used for a period of time that is now being decommissioned. I am pretty sure that those macros also exist in Word, but at the time I used Excel. It was just for technical reasons. And you know, the way I fronted it, it was just a matter of, it's a payload thing, sure, yeah. It's a payload thing. Awesome stream, thanks, thank you very much. Can you elaborate on your categorization process? Also, do you do anything from a follower perspective to block other curious visitors? Yes. So we have really when we deploy our C2 infrastructure and payload hosting, we have really strict rules. Some are related to firewall, some are related to basic authentication, building in authentication to the payload hosted link. So, you know, not everybody in the internet can reach those payloads because that's just a really bad OPSEC. When it comes to categorization, I can tell you that it's not like it's super secret or anything, but you know, there are certain email filtering services or blocking services that have external options to categorize your domain. So you would create the domain and you would either redirect it or create the legitimate site, and you would submit it for categorization to the service in question, and then they would categorize it because they can see that it's a legitimate service. And then you would switch it out. To keep, yeah. So I'm gonna take this moment to suggest that if anybody wants to join my Discord, that would be awesome. You know, I'm trying to grow the community there. Right now, I'm sort of still working on getting the activity up, but feel free to join. There's also a submissions chat, and if you have any submissions for stuff you want me to do stream-wise, please post them there. There are some submissions, and I think I have a couple of ideas I want to do for the next streams, but please post your submissions. Can be tool related, can be TTP related, anything. So do you just do a bunch of them, or do you typically find one they use somehow? No, both ways. You know, sometimes you can find it through information gathering. Sometimes you can find it by simply emailing them. You know, from an information gathering perspective, you could email them using, you know, a third-party email provider or something, and then send them a link in the email, and then when they reply, you can check that link again, and their mail protection that protects the link usually wrap the link so you can tell what they use. That's a really cool trick, actually. To figure out, just do some interaction with them. And that's often something we do more and more for target operations, is that to gain information from the target, we actually initialize the communication with them through like legitimate means. You know, again, talking to them on LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't want to target personals, like I don't want to target people in their private time, but you know, me creating a LinkedIn and talking to somebody isn't illegal or an attack by any means. And it could be to gain information, it could be to gain an understanding of how stuff operates internally. You know, you could ask them, "Hey, I'm about to go to a job interview for your employer. Should I tell them anything specific? Is there any tips you can give me?" And you know, you might be able to trick out of them if they use Office a lot, if they use Mac or Windows. Maybe there's a framework they use. Maybe even if they use MFA or not. Right? I'm not saying those are things you can't get from other information gathering resources, but just as an example. By initiating a line of communication to the target or people working for the target, you can gain a lot of information without, you know, breaking scope or breaking the goals. But yeah, feel free to join the Discord. I linked that. And I think that's going to be it for today. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. It's been a great stream. I enjoyed it so much. And I'm hoping to see everybody here next Sunday as well. If you have any submissions or suggestions for what I could talk about, please feel free to drop them in the Discord or DM me on Twitter or whatever. I linked the Discord and my Discord in the chat, so feel free to join that. But other than that, you know, I thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. It's been fun. And have a great Monday. Monday's just around the corner, you know. That's what I say every Friday. I say, you know, it's Monday soon. It's Monday soon. Have a great one, guys. Later.